Tell me about the peak of your shoe flipping career.
Absolute peak was, there was this one day where it was called Yeezy Day. And essentially there was 10, 15 different Yeezy releases all happening within the same day. I hit over 100 pairs, and I think total profit, I made like $11,000 or $12,000 in that single day. But we call them price errors. And essentially how it works is different websites, they're constantly just messing up their listings. So we were able to get these $350 tires from Amazon for a total of $40 each. Whoever is putting in the time, putting in the effort to be there at that time, spamming checkout or whatever it is to be able to try and get that item, those are the people who are actually putting in effort to be able to secure those items. And so for someone who did absolutely nothing to come around and say, this isn't fair and this isn't the way that it should be, the reality is that they got outcompeted and they got outworked.
Do you dream of being the undisputed top couch flipper in your market? Hard work alone won't get you there. The secret? Working smarter, not just harder. Enter Ivy Flip. You're listening to our podcast to get the cutting edge when it comes to tactics for running your flipping business. So why not also have the cutting edge when it comes to technology for your couch flipping empire? Ivy Flip has the best sourcing app for couch flippers in the world. With Ivy Flip, you won't have anxiety about missing a couch deal. We will work 24 hours a day to notify you as soon as the deals you're after are posted, meaning you'll get there before your competition and with a fraction of the effort. And right now, we are offering a 1-week free trial to new users. Try it out before it's too late. Just search Ivy Flip in the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store now, or click the link in bio.
On this episode of the Couch Pod, I'm joined by Troy Samek of SoFlo Sneakers and also the founder of a Discord community for all things reselling. Troy, thank you for joining us on the pod today. And if you could give our audience a little bit of your backstory, I think that would be a great place to start off.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. Excited. And essentially, my name's Troy. I have kind of kicking it way back. I've been reselling since 13, 14 years old, just with phone skins, skateboards, skimboards, and just little niche markets here and there. And I really got deep into everything around 2019, around the end of it. And really what I picked up was sneaker reselling, essentially just hit the ground running once I sort of discovered that entire market.
At this point, and we were speaking earlier, you're 24 years old, you're able to support yourself fully on income from reselling and the Discord community that you manage. Like, have you ever had a real job, quote unquote, or have you always been able to kind of make a living doing your hustles?
Yeah, so it's interesting. From a very young age, I always just had that entrepreneurial itch. And I always just kind of knew deep down somewhere I was going to figure something out and not have to work for anybody else. I've had some small jobs, water park, concession stands. I was a food runner at a sports bar called Duffy's in Florida. And so just some little part-time side gigs just throughout high school, but never really had any full-time corporate type job. I went to UCF college as a finance major and ended up dropping out my third year. I think I had 6, 7, 8 credits left or something like that. And reselling was taking off. I was beginning to start my group and I just said, F it. Essentially.
No, I'm very impressed with how far you've come in such a short period of time. Like I have a similar story actually. I was telling you, this is my 5th company, but I also dropped out of college with a year left, literally 1 year left at 2 semesters worth of credits. But the thing for me was I didn't know before I dropped out, like years before, I knew maybe a month before I dropped out that this is what I really wanted to do. And the catalyst for me was I took a semester off from college and I traveled to Cambodia, Vietnam, and Korea, 1 month each in each country. And I'm half Korean, half Cambodian. And I was born in Korea and I was very familiar with Korea. My mom's side of the family, I visited a bunch, but I'd never been to Cambodia. And in Cambodia from 1975 to 1979, there was a genocide. My family, my dad's side, they're all refugees. And I saw firsthand where my dad came from. And I saw kids 5 years old, begging on the street, zero opportunity. And that really sparked a change in me where I just realized I should really be thankful for all the opportunities that I have, and if I should try and take advantage of that and also try to create opportunities for other people. So that's one of the driving or guiding principles that I try to live by and kind of got me into entrepreneurship as well. Yeah, I hustled, but not flipping things. I did have a business where I'd do other people's essay essays for them, write people's essays for
Before
like their AP
ChatGPT.
Before ChatGPT, yeah, I'd be out of business right now. So tell me about the peak of your shoe flipping career, because I understand that you were more heavily involved in the past and now you're sort of transitioning into some other endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. To make it clear for the audience, for peak, we are talking about heavy sneaker botting. So this is utilizing software to essentially go onto Nike, Adidas, Yeezys, whatever was popular at that time, and just running hundreds of credit cards, hundreds of accounts, and just trying to hit as many pairs as humanly possible. And so absolute peak was, there was this one day where it was called Yeezy Day. And essentially there was 10, 15 different Yeezy releases all happening within the same day. And I was able to hit over 100 pairs throughout the entire day. I ended up waking up late and I missed the first two releases and I was pissed about that. But from start to finish, I think it was like 8 a.m. to like 9 p.m. at night. It was the entire day. I hit over 100 pairs and I think total profit, I made like $11,000 or $12,000 in that single day from all the Yeezys. So that was like, that's the first thing that pops into mind when you say peak. And just overall, it was just really heavily on the sneaker botting and just trying to figure out how I can get as many pairs as possible.
Yeah, and what was like an average revenue or profit number on a monthly basis when you're more focused on sneaker flipping, just to give our audience a sense of what's possible?
Yeah, I mean, just sneakers at that time, I was probably doing anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000 profit every single month. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I was also flipping PS5s and graphics cards and sports cards and all that kind of stuff as well. So I was consistently having 10 to 15K months in profit during that time.
Amazing. And you know, our core audience is couch flippers. The world of acquisitions for couch flipping is very different than acquisitions for sneakers. What I mean by that is all of the sales are happening for sneakers online predominantly, right?
Yeah, you do sell locally as well, but most of them are bought and then a lot are sold online.
And there's been a prevalence of technology usage when it comes to running and automating a sneaker flipping business that really is just starting to begin in the couch flipping world, maybe in some ways spearheaded by us and the technology that we've created. So tell me a little bit about that process. I assume without usage of technology, without usage of these bots, you're just basically at a disadvantage. You can't really compete in modern day sneaker flipping.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do it, right? And it's just like, I'm sure you can couch flip without the software, but you are going to be at a severe disadvantage from me running 100 accounts onto a website and literally having whatever percentage increase chance that is versus someone who is just running one or two, or someone who is, for example, sitting there typing in their name and typing in their address and typing in their credit card information when I've already checked out 10 pairs by the time, they're done typing in their first name. And so absolutely, there's a massive disadvantage. And I think just with the way the world's heading right now, any kind of software and any kind of automation that can assist people and help them with the acquisition of whatever item, if we're talking about reselling that they're trying to resell, it's an absolute must and an absolute advantage.
Yeah, I think there is a difference in the kind of thing that we're flipping, right? Between, let's say, sneakers or couches, in that sneakers are limited in quantity. And so due to the small number of sneakers that get released in every batch, you can take something that is brand new and immediately have an increased resale value. Whereas like in couch flipping world and, let's say flipping used electronics, flipping used cars, you're buying something from someone else that's been used that has already depreciated in value, but you don't have the supply limitation of. So the game is a little bit different here. Can you tell me about how do you spot what releases? Like, is there a way of knowing in advance like what the resale value of something's going to be? Know what to go after?
Definitely. I'm sure it's the same in couch flipping where you're going to have the certain brands, the certain models, the sectional versus the recliner, however it works. And so it's the same exact thing where you're just going to have your general models. Like pretty much what's hot right now is Nike. At this exact moment in time, Adidas Adidas and Yeezy are basically dying out because they split with the whole partnership and that whole thing went sideways. So Nike is really what's super hot right now, and retros, Jordans are going to be really what's hitting right now. Like there was 2 releases today, very limited, but the first one was like $300 to $400 profit. They were called the Futura SB Dunks. And then J Balvin, the big Spanish singer, he released a shoe as well. Those were another $150, $200 in profit. And both of those happened this morning. But basically what you can do is you're essentially just doing market research. And so you're going to go onto StockX.com, which is kind of the main sneaker platform that most people look at. And you're also going to go onto eBay. And what happens a lot of time with sneakers in specific is that you're always going to have people who are connected and the plugs and whatever you want to call them who are going to have the sneakers early. There's always going to be people selling the shoes before the actual release. And so the best way to be able to gauge, besides for just knowing the general models and the general collaborations that are doing good, is you're going to be looking at pre-sale prices, and then you're also going to be looking at pre-sale volume. And so we can pretty much predict on the money 90% of the times exactly how much a sneaker is going to be reselling for before the actual release happens. And just on a quick side tangent, that's one of the reasons why I love it so much, is because it really is a risk-free avenue to make money with. Yeah, they're limited, and yeah, they're difficult to get, especially when you're just starting out. But you go for something, you basically know that it's going to be guaranteed profit. And that's what I love about reselling in general. It's the same thing with couches. If you know that you're getting this couch for this price under market, you know that you are pretty much guaranteed to make money on it. And last point is that when you're buying stuff from online retailers like Nike, if something goes sideways and it doesn't work out, you just send it right back for a free return. And so that's what I love about it.
Absolutely. There are very few ventures in life that are truly risk-free, but there's literally a return policy when you're dealing in new sneakers. So I didn't even think about that. In terms of market research, is an excellent point. I'm assuming like you go to eBay and then you look up that model of sneaker, and then you look at not the listing price, but the items that have actually sold. The pre-sale items that have already been listed have already sold. So just a point of clarification for our viewers. And how do you know what sneakers are due to be released and when?
Yeah, so very basic way that everyone can do right now is Nike has their own app, and essentially this is where they're releasing all of the best sneakers. Completely free. You can enter in. And what I tell everyone is you better text and call every single relative and every single person in your family, get them to make an account. And when there's a good release going on, you better get every single one of them to enter in, because it is some of these releases like this morning, they are guaranteed profit. Guaranteed. It is 100% going to happen. And so they can download the app. It's called the Nike. It's sneakers. It's spelled SNKRS. And so that's an actionable step everyone can take right now. And then usually in most cases, they'll just load up exactly what sneakers are going to be releasing that month.
Oh, I see. So in the Nike app itself, there's a section in the app where they list all the up and coming releases.
Exactly. The tab is called Upcoming.
Perfect. Now, given that there's now probably a lot of competition for shoe reselling and this utilization of technology, how do you feel like that's impacted your ability to secure a deal?
The first point is that the market is definitely not where it was back in 2021 and 2022. It's just, we were talking about a little earlier, watches, used cars, pretty much everything. There's just less disposable income going around. And so what happened there is that there was so many different models that were reselling. Basically anything with a Nike symbol on it, you'd be able to make $100 or $200 on. That's not the case anymore. The actual models themselves that you were even able to go for has been cut down. And then, like you said, there is a lot of competition, and a lot of it just comes down to a volume game. Some of it comes down to luck, but I always tell people, the more effort you put into it, somehow the luckier you seem to get. So it definitely has gotten more difficult. Is it something that, someone can make a full-time income off of, like they were used to, or like they used to be able to? Not necessarily. Of course, you're going to have some people who still do and who are still doing big numbers with it. But for most people, I would say that it's definitely more of a side hustle. But as we just mentioned, it is a risk-free side hustle. And although they might not be easy to get, when you do get them, you are going to make money with it.
You can't hurt to try. Right.
Absolutely not.
If you have a couple free minutes and you're available at the time of release, you might as well try and pick up a sneaker.
That's it. It takes 30 seconds to enter. You do that 4 times a month. You spent 2 minutes for the chance to make hundreds in profit.
You're making me kind of want to start flipping some sneakers.
Definitely, man. Let me know. I'll help you out.
What do you think changed in recent years to reduce the demand for the different kinds of models?
Yeah, there's a couple different factors that go into play. The number one biggest is going to be Nike actually producing stock levels for these sneakers. And so what happened is that during COVID, during 2020, 2021, they saw every single sneaker that they released instant sellout, instant reselling for hundreds of dollars in profit. And so what did they do? Skyrocketed the supply. And so really what happened is how Nike works and how they produce shoes is, a shoe that you're seeing released today is being planned out and beginning production a year and a half before this. Essentially what Nike is doing, and they just put a statement out on this a month ago, is they said, we are going to start making shoes more limited again and start putting out less stock for all of these colorways. So it was really just a lagging indicator where they started pumping out these insane amount of supply essentially for all these different releases. But the issue is that the demand just wasn't there like it was when everyone was getting stimulus checks and they had thousands of dollars to blow. So that's really the biggest issue. And hopefully within the next 6, 12 plus months, we'll be able to see some changes with that. Another issue that's been happening is just fakes. The fake market has gotten huge as well. So people just don't want to pay the resale price anymore when they can get a fake that looks 90% the same. The common eye won't be able to really tell a difference. And so those two things, I would say, are probably the two biggest reasons on why certain models just aren't popular anymore.
I see. And since Nike just put out this statement, we're going to start limiting supply again. This should maybe cause a regression to the mean, or like return to normal, maybe in the next year and a half, if that's about the lead time. So for the shoe flippers out there, if you stick to it, better days are coming. Back to the topic of like being able to secure deals. Like I'm just getting started. Then my best bet is probably just creating an account and getting in line and maybe getting a couple relatives to do it as well. But there are levels to this, as we've discussed, and there are people that are using hundreds of bots, hundreds of cards, hundreds of accounts. So how do you get set up with something like that? And is that something you would recommend to someone who wants to get serious with shoe flipping?
At the moment, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, just because what's happening right now is Nike likes to go through these phases, and we call it filtering. And so essentially they will filter out all of the bot entries, or any entries that they detect is coming from a bot. At other times, they could care less, and people with bots are hitting 5, 10 plus pairs every single release. And usually this happens every 3 to 6 months or so. And so we're kind of in that point in time where I wouldn't recommend getting into botting. It's definitely something to keep on the back burner, because when Nike does let down the filters again, there's a ton of money to be made with it.
If I'm interested in starting to bot, like how do I go about that?
Essentially how it works is you can't really just go onto a website and buy a bot right now. You have to have somewhat of a connection or be in a group. So for example, in my group, we are pretty connected with all the bot owners and stuff. And so what they'll do is they'll essentially just allow people within these groups to be able to buy. And typically a bot is $50 to like $100 a month. There's a lot that goes into it, the actual intricacies of being able to run the bot itself. But essentially, that's how you would go about securing one. And then, you're going to need things called proxies. You're going to need 2 or 3 different addresses that you can ship shoes to. You're going to need multiple credit cards, and you can get that through something called virtual credit cards. Like Privacy is a website, Slash is a website. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but the whole premise behind it is that you're just making yourself look unique to Nike. Because if you are entering in 10 different accounts with the same credit card, that's a telltale sign for them to just delete all of your entries. And so you're going to want to have a different email, different IP address, different credit card, and it can go really technical, but that's kind of the main gist behind it. And so the same thing's going to apply to someone making an account manually on their phone and having their brother or their relative make it as well. You're going to want to use unique information for all the different fields. And that's going to be the best way, because these websites are actively trying to stop people from making multiple entries and into all these different sneaker releases.
So you may not know the exact answer to this, but it sounds like the filtering that Nike is doing is just based on like unique account and financial information, like unique name, shipping address, billing address.
More or less. And another big factor of it as well is that the Nike sneakers app is on your phone, but all bots work on your computer. And so they're all going to be getting desktop entries into these raffles and into these releases. So one of the biggest ways that we suspect that they filter is that they'll only give wins to people actually entering from their phone. And that's one of the biggest things that they can do that's really a pretty preventative measure.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So you have to join one of these Facebook, it's like a Facebook group or these communities, or how do you get into
Most of them are on Discord. That's kind of where the whole sneaker community resides. There is Facebook groups, but I would say that sneaker botting and just overall is going to be on Discord.
And do you have to pay for entry into these Discord communities?
So, for example, with mine, the name is Resale Kings, if anyone is interested. We have a free group where we provide, some value, and then we have the paid group where that's where all the high tier information is, to put it that way. But there are definitely tons of free resources out there. Instagram is actually huge for like getting information on what are the good sneakers to be going for and stuff like that. But in terms of the actual botting and kind of really getting into that whole aspect, you're going to want to join, and I know this is going to sound just like a shameless plug, but you're really going to want to join a group that specializes in that, because you're going to want to be handheld through the entire setup of getting everything working and really being able to see success quick with it. And so once again, I know that sounds whatever, but if someone really wanted to get into sneaker botting, then I definitely would, it doesn't have to be mine, but I would recommend joining a paid group, and it's going to be $40, $50, $60 a month, something like that. Ours is $79, but that's going to be really my recommendation if you want to get into sneaker botting itself. But for just general sneakers, there's a ton of free resources out there. I'm sure there's a ton of free Discord groups that you can join as well that are going to be providing a decent amount of information for you.
Yeah, and nothing wrong. I think it's way better to pay someone who knows how to do the thing that you want to do and learn it from them than to try and figure it out yourself most of the time.
Yes. With sneaker botting specifically, unless you are very familiar with proxies and jigging your addresses and just all these technical stuff, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure it out on your own. And ultimately, you're probably going to spend some money on things you didn't have to. And it's going to become more expensive than, you just pay someone for help. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, this is a very interesting conversation for me, because a lot of the work that we do at Ivy Flip, we deal heavily in scraping. We work a lot with proxies. It sounds like the issue with the bots available to sneaker resellers today is that there isn't a convenient consumer interface. And so it's like you're doing your setup, but maybe you're opening up the command line config of your computer to do something or something like that, right? The instructions are not super clear.
They do have UIs, and some of them have very pretty UIs. But the real issue, honestly, is just proxies are a very big issue for a lot of people. There's only a couple proxy brands that actually work, and are not being detected by all these different websites. That's one of the biggest issues. And then the other issues is just the actual websites constantly fighting to try and stop these bots and to try and stop everybody. And, there's just a lot of little intricacies, it's called jigging your address. And so essentially if my address is 123 Main Street, I can do 123 dash Main Street. And then in line 2, I'll do apartment 1, even if I live in a house. And so there's all these little things that you can do to make yourself look unique. And in that example, even if you put an apartment, or even if you put a dash, or you put an extra letter, or you remove a letter, they always end up shipping out. That's never really an issue. That's people's main concern. And so there's a whole game to it.
With proxies, you mean VPNs? You have to configure VPN on your computer in order to use the bot?
Yeah, so I'm actually talking about proxies themselves. And so essentially it's how these bots work is you're essentially just running 50 to 100 Chrome tasks onto a website. And so every single one of those Chrome tasks is going to have a unique proxy on them. So they all look like they're coming from a different IP address.
Might want to dig in a little bit more with you on this later, because it sounds like if someone could solve the problem with, if someone could create a bot that was able to successfully bypass filters and also had like an easier setup, that there's still a market to be had there.
Yeah. I mean, if you can figure out how to make these bots bypass these filters and genuinely be able to consistently get sneakers from these websites, people will pay you money for it, for sure.
Actually, I sort of just assumed that the problem had already been solved. Like, because, you know, when we were getting into sort of the flipping and side hustle markets, we're like, okay, where do we start? There are tons of flipping side hustles. We started with couch flipping because there's no tech. There was a community, but it was very small. And then, you know, I had heard of StockX, and shoe flipping there's been a lot of technological progress there. So I just sort of like assumed that the bot thing was already figured out. Kind of, it sounds like there's an opportunity, but maybe, you know, smart people have looked at it and the problem just can't be solved.
Yeah. What I will say is that some of these developers that are working these bots they're very, very talented. And so I think they're really having a hard time figuring that out.
Okay, fair enough.
But I don't really know anything about that, so I can't really say too much.
Fair enough. Yeah, very interesting. So let's say in a couple months, filters go back down, and that's just sort of up to the whim of Nike. I wonder, you know, what their reasoning is for putting those up or down. Maybe it's just based on demand. And yet you said that there are people, despite this, that are able to continue to make a successful living. How do those people do it? Like, what is their secret sauce?
Those people's secret sauce is they are purchasing off of other resellers. And so those people deal with massive volume. A lot of people have actually started selling sneakers on Amazon. So you can go onto Amazon right now and look up Jordan 1 Retro, and you're going to find a ton of listings on there. But how the big boys are doing it right now is, just like I said, they are buying up volume from other pairs of resellers, and to where they are able to sell those for more than they're paying. That can be stores, that can be overseas, that can be something like Amazon, that can be through their personal brand on Instagram. And so essentially they are just buying volume, and they're paying the resale price. They're probably getting under, you know, what you can get it for on StockX or eBay or whatever else, but they're still paying resale from other resellers, and then they are reselling them once again to other people.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, they still have margin. It's just not going to be $100, $200 on a pair of sneakers.
Exactly. Yeah, 10, but they're buying 500 pairs.
So they've probably been doing this for a while, and they're pretty well capitalized.
Yes, exactly. Those are the people who are really just kind of creating that gap right now in the market.
I guess until the market shifts back, there really aren't opportunity. It's going to be very hard for someone just starting out today to try and make a living off of this until like the market swings back, just due to the conditions today.
To make a living, absolutely. Can you make an extra $300, $500, $700 a month with pretty minimal effort, assuming that, you know, you have some luck on your side, you're actually trying to maximize the amount of accounts and entries and stuff that you're getting in? Absolutely. Is it risk-free? Absolutely.
Very cool. Final questions on the shoe side, then I want to start digging into some of the other things that you have going on. I've bought my first sneakers. What do I do?
You hightail it over to eBay. That is the #1 sneaker platform. Feel free, list it on OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace. There is a massive local market. Obviously, it depends on where you live, but if you're in a big city or some kind of decent population outside of Timbuktu somewhere, you're going to list them on local platforms, and you're going to get people that are interested. I love eBay because you're going to get a much higher price than StockX. Fun fact, I have never sold a single shoe on StockX, and I never will, just because you are, I can't say guaranteed here because it's not true, but 95+% of the cases, you're going to be getting a higher price on eBay. And eBay and StockX, they both have an authentication center. So when someone purchases the sneaker from your listing, you are just going to be shipping it to the authentication center. And the great thing about that is after they authenticate them, they ship it out to the buyer. And no matter what happens after that, you're in the clear. After it leaves the authentication center, the package can get lost. The buyer can claim they're fake. The buyer can claim they never got it. Doesn't matter. It's out of your hands, which is amazing.
Is the resale of sneakers on eBay a relatively new thing, or have they been doing this for a while? Like, I think what I had heard is that like StockX solved the problem of authentication and then eBay followed suit.
Yeah, absolutely. So eBay was actually the original place to sell your sneakers online. And this was since the early 2000s. But StockX was a massive disruptor with what you just said, the authentication process. Then eBay figured that out. And what eBay did for a long period of time, and this was when you could really make a ton of money, is that they put 0% fees. So it was completely free to sell your sneakers on eBay, and they had the authentication center. And so that's how they stole a massive market share from StockX, was they just made it free, and then they had the authentication on top of it.
Pays to be well funded. And, you know, once they got the market back, they bumped up the fees again.
Yeah, exactly. It's still a little bit cheaper than StockX too, which is great. And you will get a higher selling price as well. So it's definitely the best way.
Got it. And are there any other marketplaces? Like, have you ever sold locally? Like, what does that look like if you're going to sell locally? Let's start there.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's probably a very similar process to couch flipping or any other kind of local sale, messaging the buyer. I like to negotiate beforehand personally. If I'm buying something, that's just my style before I get out there. But yeah, negotiations go down. Obviously, just the common rules of you want to meet up at a police station or some kind of very public area. You know, if you live in a lower income area, you just want to be extra careful is kind of what I say. And yeah, same thing. It's cash or Zelle, and that's it. You get the deal done.
But given the prevalence of fakes, imagine that makes in-person transactions more difficult.
Yes. So that's a great point as well. The biggest thing with that is going to come down to reputation, and you're going to want some kind of receipts, and you're really just going to have to play it a little bit more careful when you are going in person, especially when it comes to used pairs, because that's a really easy way for people to sell fakes because they're a little bit used. Maybe there's some things that look a bit off, but you're like, well, they're used, so I can't really tell. With new pairs, I think it's a little bit easier. You know, you can obviously go off of Facebook rep and OfferUp rep. That can be faked to a certain extent. So really, it's just about getting receipts somewhat. You have to know a basic type of information, but for the most part, I really haven't had any trouble with that. And I don't know. Obviously, there's stories, but I think if you do a decent amount of due diligence, I don't think that's going to be a massive problem with new pairs, especially with releases that have just came out.
I see. So in your experience, you have both bought and sold locally.
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool. Is this fairly common with other shoe resellers as well, or are people predominantly on? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
I imagine most of your deal flow and your sales are going to happen online, but you could get sort of a one-off opportunity here and there just by keeping your eye out.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Are there any other ways that you source inventory then, like other than waiting for drops?
That is my personal way. That's the way that I've always done it. The other way is what we mentioned earlier, which is what the big boys are doing, where you're buying inventory off of others. And the one way, which the only issue with this is the authenticity, like we just talked about. But if someone wanted to really start putting in some volume and really just be able to source a virtually unlimited amount of inventory, is you would specialize in used pairs. And so you'd be looking for used pairs on eBay. They do have an authentication process for that. It's a little bit different than new, but you can source used pairs off of eBay, and you can also source a ton of used pairs local. And the great thing about that is you can definitely find some absolute steals. The worst part is the authenticity part of it. So, you know, you could find a girlfriend who just broke up with her boyfriend who's selling his shoes. You know what I mean? And like, you're going to make some money there. But you could also find the person who's trying to, you know, pull one over on you, and that's the most unfortunate part.
Okay, final question on sneaker flipping. Other than eBay and maybe listing on local marketplaces, are there any other places you might try to sell a sneaker that you have just picked up?
Yeah, so there's one other app. It's called Alias, Alias, and I don't know if you've ever heard of GOAT. GOAT is StockX's biggest competitor. And so GOAT is the website where you buy the shoes on, and then Alias is their sister website, to put it that way, and that's where you can sell shoes on as well. So that's another great platform. eBay and Alias, and then locally are going to be pretty much everyone's best bet. If you're really getting into things, then Amazon might also be a potential option to look into, but that's not something that a beginner is just going to go and try to do right away.
Absolutely. FBA and selling through Amazon is not a very simple process. Like it takes time to set up, time and money to get set up properly there. Yeah, and regardless of where you're selling, it's important to have a good seller reputation. You might take a couple sales to get things going. People trust your profile. So, all of the standard things that comes with selling on these marketplaces still apply when it comes to sneakers.
Yeah. And one last point is what a lot of the people who are pretty serious about it do is they'll make an Instagram page specifically for their business and for the sneakers that they're selling. And so whenever they're selling to people or whenever they get new pairs in, they're posting it on their Instagram, they're posting it on their stories, and that also drives a lot of local sales and also online sales that way, where they're shipping them out directly versus going through eBay or some other kind of platform.
Interesting. And these guys have websites too, or is it just IG?
A lot of them are mostly on IG, but there are people who have websites as well, mostly just on Shopify.
I think it's hard because it's nice to have your own platform, but it's also hard to get people off of another platform onto your platform, right?
Yeah.
And so interesting. Okay. And so sneaker flipping was a big part of your life. It has been a big part of your life, still is. But since in recent years, you've diversified a little bit and your other ventures are going well to the extent that you're able to live and work remotely in Medellin, Colombia, as we were talking about. Tell us a little bit more about some of the other hustles that you have going on.
So throughout, we can kick it back and we'll start with COVID where everything really took off, is PS5s. That was a huge one and very controversial one as well. Graphics cards, another huge one. And it was to the point where we had this custom software built that was just sitting on Amazon or sitting on Best Buy, just waiting for PS5s or waiting for these profitable graphics cards to restock. Once they would hit the site, send us a notification, and boom, we'd buy them, and it's instant $300, $400, $700, $800 profit on some of these graphics cards. And PS5s at peak were like $400 a unit, and we were able to get 2, 3, 4 of them every single time they were releasing. So that was absolutely insane. In more recent years, it's just been everything. I mean, there's so many different items and there's so many different niches and markets that are releasing right online. They're releasing on Walmart, Amazon, Target, niche Shopify websites for so many different things. And I could just give you some recent examples. I was telling you about the tires on Amazon. That was a pretty cool one. We call them price errors. And essentially how it works is different websites, they're constantly just messing up their listings. So we were able to get these $350 tires from Amazon, and this was within our group. We have this software that's essentially just scanning for these products, and we were able to get these $350 tires for a total of $40 each. And this was directly shipped and sold from Amazon, no third party. And we had people who got 20, 30 of them, and they're making $200 profit per tire. And so these price errors, because you're getting the items for so cheap, it's essentially impossible. That's another guaranteed profit method. And the thing with those, the downside is that they're usually limited. You have to be quick, when something happens, because they're going to go out of stock or the website's going to fix it. And sometimes, they'll cancel the orders and they won't ship out. But for examples like that, it's just absolute money printer. That's one avenue there. There's a lot of niche like art posters and just kind of collectibles that are dropping online as well. Like Grateful Dead, they have a huge fan base and a huge community. They drop some profitable stuff. Concert ticket reselling, like Taylor Swift. I mean, I didn't make a huge amount off of that, but I knew some buddies who are making like 6 figures a month from reselling these Taylor Swift tickets. So, we have sneakers, price errors, tickets, freebie flipping as well is something I'm sure your software would be massively helpful with. And, that's something else that we push. It's go on to Marketplace, go on to OfferUp, and just try to find items that people are giving away for free, especially if you live in a little bit of a middle class or even higher class area. You can get some really great items that people are just trying to get rid of. There's a lot lot of these different avenues, and most of it is happening online, and it's from just these major retailers that most people wouldn't even really think of, or these random little niches that most people wouldn't really think of. Another example, there was a Guitar Hero. They released a new guitar, and the retail price was $129. They dropped directly on Amazon, shipped and sold from Amazon, and now they're reselling for $240, $250 on eBay in very high volume. And so there's these online flips and these online drops that are happening pretty much every single day, and most people just aren't aware of them.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me about the kind of reselling that you're doing is that it's manual labor. It's not very like physically intensive. Like couch flipping is very, very physically intensive. There's a lot of, say, value add in the process of like picking up a used couch, cleaning it, and relisting it, delivering it to the next person. But like with the ways that you've been able to make money, it's like really from the convenience of your home most of the time. And the strategy is a little bit different too. Instead of buying a used item, which has real market value, and then selling it for that like market value, whatever you can get for it, it's finding items that are new but in limited quantity that if you're able to secure because of the exclusivity has an immediately increased resale value.
Absolutely. And that is what I specialize in.
Hey, arbitrage is arbitrage, right? And even still, there's value in getting something and making it available to the next person through like a channel that they can buy it from. I think people get like ticket flippers and whatever get a lot of flack for reselling, but at the same time, they're like people that couldn't make the drop, that weren't able to get in line, that are willing to pay a higher price, and in a way, that's capitalism.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a line that was drawn during COVID with baby formula, baby products, that we absolutely did not condone, nor did promote within our group. That was off limits completely. But everything else that we're talking about, the reality is that whoever is putting in the time, putting in the effort to be there at that time, spamming checkout or whatever it is to be able to try and get that item, and for them to even be aware that it's dropping because they paid for some kind of information, they paid to be in a group or whatever it is, those are the people who are actually putting in effort to be able to secure those items. And so for someone who did absolutely nothing to come around and say, this isn't fair and this isn't the way that it should be, the reality is that they got outcompeted and they got outworked. That's at least how I see it. I think it's completely fair game. It's unfortunate when someone does want an item and then maybe they can't get it because they have to pay more for it. But the reality is that the only reason that item was limited in the first place is because the person who made it did it that way. So that's my 2 cents on it. Basically, I don't really feel bad, to be honest.
Yeah, well, in the case of sneakers, resellers aren't creating the market. Nike is, right? It's interesting because if I waited 10 hours in front of Best Buy for a Black Friday sale, bought a TV for $300, and then I turned around and flipped it for $100, probably no one would complain, right? Like, there's something salient about the time and energy that was spent waiting in line physically at the Best Buy. But, when it comes to waiting in line digitally, it seems too easy. So, in principle, there's no difference, right? It's like I got in line first at Best Buy and I was waiting and I got to that TV and it was the last one in stock. I'll sell it to you, but you got to pay me market price. I think people have issue with the scale and the perception of ease. When in reality, the people that are actually making money flipping, putting a lot of time and energy into making their flipping hustle successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very well aware of the other side of the argument, but I'm also well aware of the work that goes into the opposite side, which is the people who are doing it. They don't see the work that's being put in. They just think, oh yeah, this person just happened to go on the website at this time. They easily got this item and now they're just trying to mark it up. And maybe sometimes that does happen, but for the people who are doing it at scale, especially, the people who are botting, and you can use bots, by the way, for all this other stuff as well. But those people who are really doing it at scale and who are really taking it seriously, there is a lot of preparation. And there's also a lot of investment that goes into it as well, both money and time, to really be able to secure limited items at scale.
Yeah, and for me personally, rather than cast moral judgment, I think this is just how capitalist systems work. Insofar as there is an economic opportunity and there are parties that are interested in capitalizing on it, it will happen. You're never going to stop people from flipping. It's just a part of the machine in a way, right? This is just how economies work.
I mean, if you think of every major retailer in the entire world, they're reselling as well. It's just not looked at in that way, and it's not frowned upon at all. But Target's buying it for X for wholesale, and they're reselling it to their customers for a higher price. And people are paying for the convenience because they want that item now. And it's the same exact thing that's happening, but people just, they can't throw a middle finger up to Target, so they have to go and, blame someone else.
Yeah, there's definitely a whole interesting philosophical discussion to be.
Yeah, I'm sure you understand my view.
Of course. Okay, but so price errors, anything where there's a limited supply and high demand, these are some prime opportunities to be on the lookout for and virtually risk-free ways to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is happening right now. And quite honestly, this doesn't depend on a massive market like sneaker does. If you're able to get something for 90% off, you're going to make money every single time on it. And for a popular concert, or a popular artist like Taylor Swift, when she goes on tour, there's going to be money to be made off of it. And the same thing goes for, there was this book that released called The Siege of Terror. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. But the retail price was $80, and instantly, it went sold out. You throw it on eBay for 500, sale. And once again, limited, not super easy to just go onto the website was dead. It's super laggy and stuff like that. But for the people who got them, it's instant profit like that. And so I think there's always going to be these kind of collectible niches. There's always going to be these kind of price errors. And even with sneakers, there's always going to be these shoes that are limited and that are collectible that people want. It's just not going to be a super steady supply. And so that's why I personally ventured out into all these different kind of avenues. And that's exactly what we do within my group as well, where we are sending out alerts, daily alerts for all these different items that are releasing and that the members can make money with.
Absolutely. So if you are interested in learning more about this kind of flipping and reselling, I'm going to include a link to Troy's group in the description of this video. You can go check him out. You can go check out his Discord community there. There are lots of good nuggets about things that you can buy and technology that will enable your hustle. Troy, thank you so much for joining me on the pod today. It's been very informational, opening up the world of sneaker flipping and more to our audience. And I look forward to maybe seeing you in Colombia in the next weeks to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Charles. It was awesome.
Bye-bye.